Hey, this is Vanessa Marshall. I play Hera Syndulla on Star Wars Rebels, and you're listening to the Jedi Temple Archives podcast. May the Force be with you always.
Are you interested in taking a trip to the planet of Batuu and the ultra-immersive world of Star Wars Galaxy's Edge at either the Walt Disney World Resort or the Disneyland Resort? If so, the one thing that I can tell you from personal experience is that planning any Disney vacation can be completely overwhelming. That's why you need the expert planning services of Casey Lucas at Lucas Family Travel. Casey can help you to select the perfect resort, book your fast passes, your dining reservations, including those hard-to-get Oga's Cantina reservations, and even recommend the perfect time to visit based on the historical crowd levels. And the best part is that all of these services are completely free to you and included as part of your Disney vacation package. So visit lucasfamilytravel.com today to book your vacation package and enter the promo code JTA Podcast in the comments to receive a free gift with your booking. Again, that's LUCAS familytravel.com to book your trip today. And as they say on Batuu, may the spires keep you. Welcome to episode 30 of the Jedi Temple Archives podcast.
There is more knowledge here than anywhere else in the galaxy. Only members of the Jedi Council are allowed access. Guarding the holocrons is one of the most important duties a Jedi can be given. Do you think you're up to the task?
Star Wars fans, welcome to another episode of the Jedi Temple Archives podcast. I'm your host, Rob, and we are recording this episode on Wednesday, October 16th, 2019. I'm joined once again by my co-host and friend, Tom, from the Hyperion Adventures podcast. Tom, thanks again for joining me.
Hello there. What brings you out this far?
Oh, see, you came ready this week. You're ready to play.
We're cutting sound for this episode, so I just had something ready to go for you.
That is excellent. That's excellent. And it ties in really well to what we've got planned for this week. As many of you out there know, I have been posting on social media as early as last week, basically saying that this week our episode was going to be focused on the top 5 funniest moments in Star Wars. It was pretty much fair game whether you wanted to go with the movies or if you wanted to dive into the animated series. I know personally when I was putting together my list, I basically kept it just to the films primarily because I was going to run into a huge problem narrowing down to just 5, given all the funny moments within the Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels and all the animated content out there. But suffice to say, we did get some feedback from some of our listeners, and we will get into that after Tom and I go through our list.
Excellent. It's always a great topic. There's so much to pick from. I mean, you don't realize sometimes, you laugh at most Star Wars films at some point or another, but you don't realize it, how often it comes up. And sometimes how just a little subtle line can make such a big impact and make you chuckle or even after seeing these films, 15, 20, 30, 100 times.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I mean, it totally depends on the sense of humor of the person watching the films too, because different people are kind of drawn to different things. Some like the sight gags, some like the funny one-liners, some like the kind of jokes that take a little bit more time to set up or just kind of, ludicrous scenes within the film. So I've noticed that, kind of just in the list that I got from a few of the listeners and a couple of the scenes that got sent in, they weren't things that had jumped to mind immediately for me, but they were definitely funny moments within their own right. So looking forward to getting into those. But Tom, if you got your list ready to go, we can just start off going through ours, and we'll start at number 5, and you can lead us off.
Sure. My number 5 is actually, it's a really simple line, but it's just said very dryly, but I find it extremely funny. I found it very funny from the first day it came out. I still find it funny to this day. And it is from Return of the Jedi, very early on in Jabba's palace.
How we doing?
Same as always.
That bad, huh?
It spoke too much of how this group was together, that, how you doing? Same as always. That bad. It's just this very subtle line, but it is just, it just spoke to how the gang always seemed to find themselves in trouble.
Yeah. And I mean, it's funny because that was one of the clips that Tony from Disney Discussions podcast, who had sent in a list, he mentioned that on his list, not in any particular order, but certainly when I was going through my list, that was one of the ones that was up for consideration. It didn't quite make my top 5, but definitely, really went back to the interplay between those 3 main characters within the original trilogy, and just how casually they dealt with being in the most dire situations. It was just like, another disaster we've gotten ourselves into. How are we going to get ourselves out of it?
Yep, here we go again. I mean, as part of the thing with this series is that, George Lucas tried to make it like some of the old serials, just like he did with Indiana Jones as well, where they always found themselves in this, how are they going to get out of this one scenario? And so they found themselves in that so many times that obviously even the characters involved with it realized, like, oh, here we go again. How are we going to get out of this one? So it always cracks me up.
Totally. For my number 5, I went with one of the newer films. I went with Force Awakens, and it's the moment when Han and Chewie and Finn are getting ready to break into Starkiller Base to, take down the shield, and this exchange happens.
The flooding tunnel's over that ridge. We'll get in that way.
What was your job when you were based here?
Sanitation.
Sanitation? Then how do you know how to disable the shields?
I don't. I'm just here to get Rey.
People are counting on us. The galaxy is counting on us.
Solo, we'll figure it out. We'll use the Force.
That's not how the Force works. Oh, really? You're cold?
Come on.
So, again, that iconic, that's not how the Force works from Harrison Ford was just a classic moment within that film. Definitely got a laugh out of a lot of people in the theater when we were in there watching it. And, just goes to Han Solo's character. This is the guy who didn't believe in hokey religions, right? He just trusted the good blaster at his side, but even he understands that you're not gonna take down the shields at Starkiller Base using the Force, especially if you're Finn. Although I guess there is some discussion about how many Force sensitive characters there are within the Force Awakens. I know there's been different theories out there about whether Finn is Force sensitive or Poe Dameron, but in this particular case, it certainly wasn't going to be a factor in their success for their particular mission.
Yeah, that one nearly made my list. It was on for a little bit, and I just kind of pushed it off at the end. But it is one of my favorite lines out of the sequel trilogy, and definitely out of The Force Awakens. It cracks me up. I've used it many times over in social media as well. It's just a very, very funny line for sure.
Absolutely. So, Tom, what do you got for your number 4?
My number 4 goes to The Empire Strikes Back, as there were so many great lines in this one. I could have picked from many. As a matter of fact, within this one little scene, I could have picked 2 or 3 out of it, but I chose to go with this one.
You didn't see us alone in the South Passage. She expressed her true feelings for me.
What? Why, you stuck-up, half-witted, scruffy-looking nerf herder.
Who's scruffy-looking?
I love how R2 just punctuates it there at the end, but I just find it hilarious that, Han picks that one thing out of all these insults. Scruffy looking. What are you talking about? They're just so good. But there were a couple, Laugh It Up Fuzzball was in that segment too. And I could have easily had that on here as well.
Yeah, and for all the great scenes that they had within the original Star Wars film that, got a laugh, I always felt like Empire Strikes Back was the one where they really took that to the next level. There was just so much comedy interspersed with all the serious scenarios that they found themselves in. And, when I think of, we've talked about this before, when I think of the current day Marvel films and how they do such a great job of working comedy into the overall storyline and all the action and all the suspense, that is something that goes as far back as Empire Strikes Back for me in terms of the films that I was used to watching as a kid. And that's really what I love about the new Marvel films, and what I love about Star Wars films when it's done right is, that comedy within within the film, when they're surrounded by all this danger and they still have time to sneak off one of these one-liners, or in this case, an exchange. It just kind of keeps you totally engaged within the film.
Well, especially when you juxtapose it, like you were talking about, against the tension that's involved throughout the scenes of The Empire Strikes Back. I mean, it really is a tense movie for the better part of it. So when you can drop in these funny lines, they stand out that much more, and they do lighten the mood slightly just for, that one moment. But yeah, I mean, that's just the way it worked. But I do find the writing for The Empire Strikes Back to be some of the best within the entire saga, or the oeuvre of the films.
Yeah, I completely agree. For me, my number 4, I'm going to go to Rogue One. And honestly, I could have done Rogue One for all 5 of my top 5. I love that movie that much. But it is the scene where kind of after Jyn and Cassian have escaped from being in the clutches of the Stormtroopers there, and they're saved by Chirrut and Baze. All of a sudden, they think they're clear, and the rebels of Saw Gerrera, who they had to kill a couple of them to save Jyn, or Cassian had killed one of them to save Jyn, kind of caused some collateral damage, all of a sudden show up, and they take all the members of our group of heroes hostage, and they start sticking hoods over the top of their heads so they don't see where they're going. And of course, they put a hood over the top of Chirrut's head, and he says,
"Are you kidding me? I'm blind."
It's like you were prepared for that.
That's my number 3. That's why.
Nice. See, I'm already disrupting your list. So
no, that's such a funny line. It's such a good line, and it cracks me up every single time I see it. It was beautifully spaced. It was just so ridiculous. It's just so good. And Rogue One is just so good. And the humor interspersed within what is a pretty dark movie. It just works in many regards.
Yeah, and again, that was, I think, one of the reasons why people felt like that particular film was such a tie back to the original trilogy Star Wars films. It had that exact same feeling. It had all the danger and the tension, and as you said, it was juxtaposed against that humor. So that was one of the things that really worked for me, and one of the reasons I love that film.
Agreed completely on that one. So yeah, that was your number 4. That's my number 3 as well. So I guess we just go ahead and move on to your number 3, Rob.
Oh, isn't that nice how that works? So for my number 3, it was Princess Leia when they are escaping the Death Star, and they finally get to the overlook over the hangar bay, and she sees the Millennium Falcon for the first time, and she turns to him and says,
"You came nothing? You're braver than I thought."
Nice. Come on.
So, Princess Leia, again, she was the queen of the one-liners, certainly within the original trilogy, and all the jokes made at the expense of the Millennium Falcon. I think that is certainly one of the top ones, and, again, humor against the tension of the moment.
Yeah, the snark level coming out of Leia through the entire rescue from the Death Star was just gold, in my opinion. I loved it all, and yeah, that's a great line. And it is funny, when you talk about the Millennium Falcon, and to us it's like this spectacular, beautiful ship. We walk onto it now at Smuggler's Run, and you're just like, oh, this is so amazing. But to them, they're like, look at this hunk of junk. It cracks me up every time.
Yeah, but she's got to where it counts.
Right, that's true. That's very true.
Awesome. So what's your number 2, I guess we're on to?
My number 2 is going back to Rogue One once again. So many great lines out of Rogue One, and so many great lines out of K2SO. But my favorite line out of K2SO was something that was actually improvised.
Where are you taking these prisoners?
These are prisoners.
Yes, where are you taking them?
I am taking them to imprison them in prison.
He is taking us to...
Quiet! And there's a fresh one if you mouth off again.
We'll take them from here.
It cracks me up every time. Improvised by Alan Tudyk, who, of course, plays K2SO. He's commented on the fact that is actually his favorite line that K2SO says throughout the entire film. And if you look at it, if you look very closely when that happens and you see Cassian kind of put his hand over his face to kind of protect from the slap that just happened, you kind of see a little sly smile because it was a surprise to him as well. Diego Luna had no idea that was coming. So it's just such a great line. Another one that cracks me up every time.
It also makes me cringe. I can only imagine what getting backhanded by an Imperial security droid would feel like. That seems like it'd probably split your jaw wide open. But you can definitely see him hiding that smile.
Yeah, it's so good. And but Cassian had to have been through worse,
Right.
So, but I could have picked I could have just, this whole list just could have been K2SO lines because I find him so funny that it easily could have just filled up the whole 5.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I know I said I could make the top 5 all from Rogue One, but they certainly could have all been from K2SO. And really the number 2 for me also from K2SO within Rogue One. And, I hadn't really decided on which of the 2 I was going to go with until right now, but in the interest of not doing a 2A and 2B, I would have to say that it is the scene where they're approaching Scarif.
And they shut the gate, and we're all annihilated in the cold, dark vacuum of space. Not me. I can survive in space.
It was just so dry. All the humor from K2SO was just so dry, but hilarious all at the same time. It's just so perfectly nuanced. Alan Tudyk does a great job, and I just can't wait to see more interaction between he and Diego Luna moving into the Cassian Andor series once that finally debuts on Disney Plus.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, certainly a Star Wars spy movie, which is a genre that we really haven't delved into a whole lot, is going to be amazing. But to top that with that comedy that goes on whenever you've got Alan Tudyk playing any role within a film. I mean, Lord knows he played a chicken in Moana and was hilarious without saying a word.
That's right. He is such an interesting person and interesting character actor in many regards. The way he can change up to be somebody different so many times, it's incredible. I'm an Alan Tudyk fan for sure.
Yeah, I don't know how you can't be. So, all right. So we are down to your number 1. What do you got for us?
My number 1 goes right back to the very first Star Wars movie I saw, the original Star Wars, now later entitled, Episode 4, A New Hope. And it's something from Han. And from what I understand, he didn't exactly want to study up on this part of it because he kind of wanted it to feel kind of natural and kind of awkward anyways. But it just came out and is just a beautiful, beautiful short scene.
Everything's under control. Situation normal.
What happened?
Had a slight weapons malfunction, but everything's perfectly all right now. We're fine. We're all fine here now. Thank you. How are you?
We're sending a squad up.
Negative. We have a reactor leak here now. Give us a few minutes to lock it down. Large leak, very dangerous.
Who is this? What's your operating number?
Boring conversation anyway.
It's just so good that it just seems so awkward. You can tell he's trying to fill, and then when it's all said and done, Han just is Han. It's just blows it up. All right, done with this conversation. Boring anyway. So it just was one of the one scenes in A New Hope that just cracked me up. I keep saying cracked me up, but it was so funny over and over again. It still makes me laugh to this day.
Right, and certainly he was a gambler in the sense that he played Sabak and was willing to put things on the line, but it had far more to do with the fact that he was just always flying by the seat of his pants, both in the Falcon as well as in all of his personal dealings. And this was just a classic moment of him trying to improvise something. I mean, this was my number 1 as well. I'm sure I telegraphed it by making that the image that I put out on social media when I was asking for input. And I think it's probably going to end up being a lot of people's number 1, or certainly right up there in the top 5, because it is just, it's everything that's great about that original Star Wars film. You talk about the fact that Lucas may or may not have been able to write dialogue for characters, but whether that is the case or not, and like you said, a lot of this was just kind of off the cuff by Harrison Ford, but the fact that they were allowed to do that and it was so successful in the film is just a huge testament to Star Wars and what made it successful in the first place.
It was lightning in a bottle in so many regards. I mean, yes, the interesting storyline, the amazing effects, the soundtrack, and then you just get this crazy chemistry between the main 3 heroes of the film. It just was kind of lucky the way everything came together so well through that original trilogy, and definitely in this film, which if it's not a success, we never get to where we are, where you have a podcast right now and we're discussing this some 40 plus years later.
Yeah, I totally agree. And, this is a perfect segue into some of the other feedback that we got from our listeners. So first and foremost, we've got Tony at the Disney Discussions podcast. They're a Disney podcast that he does with his two boys, Stitch and Sparrow. If you haven't checked them out, they do love Star Wars. They love Marvel. Definitely go check them out. Again, that's the Disney Discussions podcast. And Tony sent us a list in no particular order, but I'll just kind of go through them here and you guys can decide what you think about them. The first would be Chewbacca cooking a porg within The Last Jedi. So I think, certainly it's a little bit gruesome, but at the same time kind of funny, considering the fact that he ends up developing this, I don't know, kind of companionship with the porgs later in the film. But he's sitting there turning it on the spit, and he's got these 3 porgs sitting there looking at him, kind of tears in their eyes, and all he can do is roar, right? Right. So certainly a funny moment. Again, I don't know how you get over that to all of a sudden be allies, but apparently the porgs were able to overlook it. Even when you go to Black Spire Outpost and Batuu and Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, if you get inside the Falcon and you look around, you will still see some of those porg nests are still floating around the ship.
Yep. One of the other details to look for as you're going through Star Wars Galaxy's Edge and Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run, I've always found unfortunate. I really want to check out the interior part of the Millennium Falcon. As much as I want to get in and fly the Falcon itself, now that I've done that a few times, I was like, can I have just 5 more minutes to look around here in the crew quarters in the cabin there and see all the nuance, all the different details that are there. But there is still so much to take, even though we've, been in there 5-6 times, I still find new things every time we look.
No, we know you're trying to go back and find Lando's cape closet, right?
I'm convinced Michelle knows where it is.
She probably does. Yeah. Although a lot of those capes might be dragging on the ground behind Michelle, so
true. We need a lamb,
right.
A lamb on that.
Right, she's going to kill me for that. But all right. So the next scene that Tony had given us was this particular scene with Yoda from Empire Strikes Back.
Now all I got to do is find this Yoda, if he even exists. It's really a strange place to find a Jedi Master. This place gives me the creeps. Still, there's something familiar about this place. I don't know. I feel like we're being watched.
Oh, wait, put your weapon. I mean you no harm. I am wondering, why are you here?
I'm looking for someone.
Looking? Found someone you have, I would say.
Right.
Help you I can. Yes.
I don't think so. I'm looking for a great warrior.
Oh! Great warrior. Oh. Wars not make one great. My home. Slimy. My home this is.
R2, let him have it.
Mine.
R2! Now you move along, little fella. We got a lot of work to do.
No. Stay and help you, I will. Find your friend.
I'm not looking for a friend. I'm looking for a Jedi Master.
Oh, Jedi Master. Yoda. You seek Yoda.
You know him?
Take it to him, I will. Yes. But now, we must eat. Come. Good food.
So, obviously this is the first time we get to meet Yoda within the original trilogy. It wasn't, I can't even think back that far, but that the first time you watched that, you didn't know that was Master Yoda that Luke was looking for. And you just got this diminutive little strange creature rooting around through all his supplies and pulling out the lamp and fighting R2 for it. And just a great comedic scene in kind of a dark setting to lighten the mood a little bit.
Yeah, and we talked about this a couple weeks ago when we did our Star Wars Remembered series, looking back at The Empire Strikes Back on the Hyperion Adventures podcast, and we discussed how important it was for them to be able to pull off Yoda as a puppet and make you believe in that this is a living, breathing character and could be a Jedi Master, or in this case, you're some strange hermit that is on this planet that runs into Luke. But Frank Oz did a masterful job. The puppeteers did such a masterful job that you buy into it completely, and it was a crux of making The Empire Strikes Back work.
Yeah, I'm so glad that it worked out, and I've definitely seen some of the making of, and I'm in the middle of rereading the making of Empire Strikes Back right now, and the section that I'm in is dealing specifically with all the concerns they had about how they were going to do, how they were going to portray Yoda within the film, and how they were going to make that believable. So certainly they did. I know that later some of the CGI they employed was a little bit sketchy, but I'm really glad that they've kind of gotten that worked out, and that when we do see Yoda on screen, he's just as believable when they've got him computer generated as he was back when they were using practical effects.
Yeah, like I said, it's just been amazing that they've been able to work that way. I mean, CGI now is it's almost a different form of puppeteering in many regards, as far as the screen caps and everything else that they have to do. We're talking about Alan Tudyk playing K2SO. Basically, he was puppeteering this giant. He had this head, this little cone shaped head thing that was on top of his own head that all the actors had to look at every time. So they were looking at the right height for K2SO. And so it's impressive with what they've been able to do. And, many of it started with Yoda as a puppet, and then, Jabba, the next film, as a giant puppet run by, several puppeteers.
Right. Yeah. They definitely were masters at their craft. That's for sure. The next scene that Tony sent in was again from Empire Strikes Back, although this time we're dealing with a scene with C-3PO and Chewbacca that takes place in Bespin, and that scene played out like this.
If only you'd attached my legs, I wouldn't be in this ridiculous position. Now remember, Chewbacca, you have a responsibility for me, so don't do anything foolish. I'm not ready to die! What's going on? Turn round! Chewbacca, I can't see!
We keep coming back to it, but talk about a dark setting. You've got Han getting taken by the Stormtroopers and placed in a position where they're going to freeze him in carbonite, and C-3PO, of course, is facing off in the wrong direction. He can't see anything and freaking out and telling Chewbacca to turn around. And it was just, again, comedy in a very strange setting that worked within that particular film.
Yeah, again, a credit to Anthony Daniels for playing that role so well. And again, this was another issue where there had to be puppeteering involved with it, because it wasn't like Anthony Daniels was strapped to the back of Peter Mayhew as Chewbacca's back, So there had to be some puppeteering as well as some voice matchup there. And it comes off really well. And, you feel for Chewbacca, who's trying to help him out, he's carrying him on his back, trying to put him back together. And there's C-3PO being his usual prissy self. I can't see. Turn me around.
Yeah, poor Chewbacca. I mean, he seemed to get a lot of heat within that film, both from Han during the initial phases when they were on Echo Base and Hoth, and again, 3PO. Talk about unappreciative. I mean, he would have still been in the scrap heap had Chewbacca not come and found him. So again,
I think he was going in the furnace, as a matter of fact. He might have been melted to who knows what.
Right. I mean, again, he's very fortunate considering how Han barely could stand 3PO that entire film. He's fortunate that Chewbacca kind of felt like his life debt encompassed that entire group of what he considered his family. So the next one that Tony had sent in, we already discussed. It was the clip Tom played earlier from Return of the Jedi, where, you know, Han's asking Luke, how are we doing? And Luke says, same as always. So I think we all agree that that is definitely a great clip within that particular film. And his final submission to us was once again from Empire Strikes Back, which, you know, I would put up there with Rogue One as one of the funniest Star Wars films, just in terms of the number of comedic moments they had within it. And again, it's an Echo base on Hoth. They're trying to escape from the Empire. Han's trying to get the Millennium Falcon started. It's just kind of stalling out over and over again. And Leia says this.
Would it help if I got out and pushed?
Captain Soda.
Mine.
So that entire scene was kind of the crowning moment of all the comedic interplay back and forth between Han and Leia within the setting of Echo Base there, and was just the perfect kind of cap on that as they escaped, and then ended up right back in the danger zone again with the Imperial Star Destroyers chasing them down. But you couldn't have picked a better line. It was kind of a foldover from the original Star Wars film when she was constantly making one-liners at the expense of the Falcon. And once again, she's, you know, kind of hitting Han where it hurts the most in the starship.
And just the tension, you tell there was something really going on between the two of them, the tension that they're always sniping at one another, trying to sort of, disguise their own feelings. But also within that whole scene, just the audio gag of the car not turning over, essentially sound of the Millennium Falcon, just so good. The whole thing leads into the same joke.
Yeah. And so that pretty much wraps it up for Tony's contributions. Tony, thank you so much for sending those in. The next list that we got was from Jake Nielsen, who has been a follower of ours basically since the beginning. And he has actually got a new podcast called Canine Critique. So if you're into listening to reviews of dog movies, he and his friend have started up a podcast where they do that. Neither of them are like hardcore dog lovers. They're kind of indifferent about dogs. So it's a bit of a comedic contrast, I guess, there with the two of them reviewing some of these films. And it's definitely just silly, a good time. So if you're into that type of thing, go check them out. But his number 5 was more of a visual gag within the original Star Wars film. And that was the moment where the Stormtroopers break through the blast door into the communication center where C-3PO and R2-D2 were hiding while the rest of them were off to save Princess Leia. And when you watch that scene, the first Stormtrooper comes in and makes it under the door, no problem. But there's a pair of Stormtroopers behind him, and one of them just runs full-on helmet into the blast door. And so a lot of people don't even know that's there. But if you're watching that particular scene, look for it. As you're facing the screen, it's the Stormtrooper on the right, and you just see him kind of, their head snaps back a little bit. It's a testament to the fact that when they made that initial Star Wars film, George Lucas, the film you see is basically all the usable clips that they were able to capture during filming. They did not have a lot of room to cut stuff out, and they didn't have a lot of optional additional clips to fit in. They had such a difficult time shooting that film, and some of these things did slip through. So that's a great little tidbit for anyone who's not familiar with it.
Yeah, and it's one of those scenes that you catch these in several films, but there's definitely a few within Star Wars that once you've seen it, you can't unsee it. You look for it every single time you watch it after that.
Absolutely. So the next clip that Jake wanted to point out was in Return of the Jedi. And again, this is on the skiff when Jabba's planning to feed them into the pit of Carkoon out there, and Han Solo and his relationship with Boba Fett, which has been certainly a little bit hit and miss at this point. It's mentioned that Boba Fett's behind him, and Han says this. So certainly that scene ends up leading to what appears to be the demise of Boba Fett, although there's still a lot of conjecture out there that he had survived his trip down in the gullet of the Sarlacc. I guess we'll find out if they make anything additional within the Star Wars kind of pantheon of entertainment regarding Boba Fett after that particular time period. But certainly another one of those classic, just goofy lines that they were so good with in Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, just one of those, you see Boba Fett as this big bad bounty hunter, and for, a half blind Han Solo just to turn and send him flying into the sail barge, and then down into the Sarlacc pit. Just comedy, total comedy.
Yeah, and it's okay when Han Solo does it, but that is like a total Jar Jar moment, right? As much as people had a problem with Jar Jar, it was always just kind of that accidental, kind of slap happy accident type thing that would happen with Jar Jar, where he'd take out the enemies through just accidents on his part.
Well, we all know Jar Jar's a Sith Lord, so really he was just playing that up.
Yeah, I don't take it from me. Tom is now on the Darth Jar Jar bandwagon. So
yeah.
All right, so the next couple, Jake's cheating a little bit here, but I can't really argue with him. His number 3 is basically anytime Salacious Crumb laughs within Return of the Jedi, and that is the little Kowakian monkey lizard that you see kind of perched above Jabba within his throne room, and again on the sail barge. So I'll play a couple of clips of that. The laughter is certainly infectious.
Artu, you're playing the wrong message.
Solo Fortunate Chaya.
I know that laugh. Look, Jabba, I was just on my way to pay you back, and I got a little sidetracked.
Chikabuk, you need Solo.
So now not only can you listen to Salacious Crumb laugh whenever you want, but you can now purchase your own Kowakian monkey lizard down at Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. It seems to be kind of a popular item for folks that are down there visiting.
Yeah, I've never, before Salacious Crumb, I'd never seen them before. Now they're like on every shoulder walking through Batuu. It's pretty amazing. It's pretty good business.
Yeah, I don't think I'd ever heard a laugh like that anywhere before, and another thing that you can't unhear once you've heard it.
Yeah, for sure. And it's such an evil kind of cackle too. It's really, really funny.
Yep. So Jake's number 2, once again, cheating, but we're going to let it slide this time. It's basically any and all of Obi-Wan's one-liners from the Clone Wars and the prequel films. So I'll play a quick clip of a few of those here.
Did you really think I would leave the hyperdrive unguarded?
Anything is possible. You haven't exactly impressed me today.
I thought gun ducks were only found on Vancor!
Then this system must be Vancor.
So that would make this one
the mother of all gun ducks. Precisely.
It's a pity. I was just starting to sense a connection.
Should I leave you two alone?
I'm sorry to disagree, but as long as the Jedi are acting as a military, we should report to the Chancellor, even on internal matters such as this.
Well then, I guess you just volunteered to go. Give the Chancellor my regards.
Now wait a minute.
I thought I told you not to follow me, Master Kenobi?
Yes, well, I took a lesson from Anakin and decided not to follow orders.
Hey, they're in trouble.
Anakin, have faith in your Padawan.
She would have checked in.
Like you always do?
Good point.
Sometimes I don't think you realize how alike you two have become. I think we should go this way.
Why do you even ask for my opinion? You never do things my way.
We crashed the ship your way.
Very funny. I see your sense of humor survived the landing.
It's about the only thing.
I know Tom's a big fan of Obi-Wan, and he certainly had that dry sense of humor that played so well in a lot of those clips.
Yeah, he's the snark level on Obi-Wan sometimes, or just just barely tolerating, Anakin and Ahsoka and some of the stuff that's going on around him is amazing. But and again, we talk about this. It seems like week in and week out. You get so much more depth into some of these characters when you've watched the Clone Wars. I mean, you may have seen Obi-Wan, of course, in the original trilogy. You get a little piece of him, but not that much. You see him in the prequel trilogy. And you get some of it there. You get a little bit more backstory from him, a little more. But when you really delve deeply within his character and how he interacts with the other Jedi and the clones that he is leading, and Anakin and Ahsoka, you really see much more of who this person is and what led him to be this great hero. And the same goes, we talked about it many times, Anakin and Ahsoka.
Yeah, I definitely say that his sense of humor was probably one of the things that saved his sanity at the end of Revenge of the Sith there, given all the things that were kind of falling apart that were a huge part of his life. But he always kind of maintained that humorous objectivity, I guess, no matter how dire the situation, and certainly was well known for that within all the prequels. And again, in the Clone Wars, he just shines, I think.
Yeah, and again, we talked about like K2SO when his dry wit, and Obi-Wan, he's never trying to look for the joke, but he would always have that snarky line that could really bring a smile to you or a chuckle or whatever the case may be.
Absolutely. So Jake's number one was more of a visual gag, I think, than anything else. But at the end of the pod race there within the Phantom Menace, as they're celebrating Anakin's victory, there is a super awkward high five that takes place. So definitely watch for that when you watch that film the next time. It's, there's so many things within the Phantom Menace that you're not sure whether it's funny or just cringy, but definitely, you see some of that stuff and you just can't help but laugh.
They were just talking about scenes that you just can't unsee once it's happened once. You watch for it every single time, and it just cracks me up every time. The sort of high five that really didn't take place, and then just the looking around afterwards, and it's just like, really, you couldn't reshot that. What's that scene? Oh, it's just so good though. It's so funny.
Yeah, I can certainly give them a break. I can only imagine the amount of work that goes into cleaning up the major issues that they have with those films. So certainly some of this stuff's going to slip through, and they're probably hoping no one fixates on it. But as you said, when people see it, it all of a sudden becomes a topic of conversation. So. And the final submission we got from one of our listeners, Rafaela, on our Twitter follower, one of the people who's been with us for quite some time, was kind enough to send us her submission, and it was really just one clip that jumped out at her, but it is from Revenge of the Sith, when Obi-Wan and Anakin and Chancellor Palpatine get caught in the ray shield on General Grievous's ship, and it's specific to R2 kind of making his grand entrance into that scene, and that goes like this.
I say patience.
Patience?
Yes. R2 will be along in a few moments, and then he'll release the ray shields. See? No problem.
Do you have a plan B?
So again, so much of this humor ends up being tied back to droids, which is one of the things they do such an amazing job within Star Wars. And R2 is certainly one of the droids that we get a lot of comedic moments from, whether it's falling off the ship into the swamp on Dagobah, or in this case, being chased down by battle droids and coming shooting out of a side corridor and slamming into the wall. Never short for kind of making his grand entrance into a scene.
And the sound effects behind him just punctuate a lot of these things so well. Whereas the loud squeal like that one, or I think back to A New Hope when he first gets shocked by the Jawas, and everything goes crazy, and then it's just like timber. All those sound effects help sell the part of this this character that doesn't really speak anything that you understand anyway, but sells exactly what it's going through.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's going to wrap it up for most of our fan submissions. Tom, I know you said that your wife, Michelle, your wife and co-host on the Hyperion Adventures podcast, had put together about a little 3-minute clip of some of her funniest moments. So let's go ahead and play that.
Yeah, she wanted to be on the show, but unfortunately she just couldn't work it in with her schedule to join us today. So she came up with her 3 favorites. She didn't have a lot of time to put together all 5, but here are her 3 favorite lines.
Well, hi, Rob. So sorry I can't make it in person on your show this week, but thanks for including my choices of funny scenes in Star Wars. Let me tell you, it was a challenge to limit it down, but today I've kept it to 3. And, one would say it seems kind of obvious that the comic statements were really means to bring a little relief to the audience surrounding some intensive situations. But as I reflected on them, I found that there also serves other purposes. For example, first one that I'm going to talk about is from Revenge of the Sith. When Anakin and Obi-Wan are rescuing Palpatine and suddenly get trapped in ray shields. That's when Obi-Wan says,
Wait a minute. How did this happen? We're smarter than this.
Apparently not.
So, yeah, it was a funny scene, but it also was a way to kind of show the relationship these two had together and having that ability to banter. Then my number 2 scene actually comes from A Force Awakens. I mean, there's a ton of them in that movie, but my favorite is when Poe, who was just captured and on his knees facing Kylo Ren, breaks the tension with,
So who talks first? You talk first? I talk first?
The old man gave it to you.
It's just very hard to understand you with all the
Search him.
apparatus.
Yeah, it gives a relief pause to, some really horrific scenes that had just happened, but it also gives you a glimpse in the type of person that Poe is and how he can react and handle pressure. Okay, now we're down to my favorite number 1 funny scene, and it actually comes during the film Rogue One, which kind of seems odd since it's a really dark movie, but the comic moments were masterfully placed throughout the story, and it probably is no surprise to you that it includes the lovable K2SO. So the scene is when Cassian and Jyn are battling stormtroopers and barely escaping death, and K2SO breaks in the scene, saving them from a grenade explosion.
Did you know that wasn't me?
Of course.
I thought I told you to stay on the ship.
You did, but I thought it was boring and you were in trouble. There are a lot of explosions for 2 people blending in.
Freeze, right there.
You're right. I should just wait on the ship.
So to me, it really shows that K2SO actually has the ability to make independent decisions in service of a fellow comrade. And obviously that he has heart. Hashtag bring back K2SO. Well, that's it for my selections. Thanks again so much for including me, and may the force be with you.
That is awesome. Thank you so much, Michelle. Really appreciate you sending in your list. And I think it's, again, a testament to how many funny moments there are. Even the fact that we had gone through 4 lists plus an extra submission, and all 3 of the things that Michelle had submitted had not even been discussed yet. So pretty incredible that she was able to avoid all the selections that were made before she got her say.
Yeah, she had no idea what was on my list. She had obviously no idea what was on your list or the other listeners of the podcast. And it just is impressive. And there are so many more lines. And we've even discussed some that, weren't on our list that could have been added. And, it's just a testament to how good this series of films is, that they have so much humor interspersed when it's not a comedy. These films aren't comedies, but that doesn't mean that you don't get a good chuckle here and there. They don't lighten the mood when things are extra tense or whatever the case may be. It's just so many times really well written, often really well acted, or in sometimes improvised. Just extremely, extremely well.
Yeah, certainly. And the great thing about all these comedic moments is they're so true to the characters too, which is a testament to the depth of those particular characters within the saga. So that's going to go ahead and wrap it for the main topic for this week's show. Certainly, if there's anyone out there who wants to submit your thoughts, even after the fact, on what you thought were some of the funniest moments within Star Wars, I know there were plenty of things that we overlooked. I had a whole list of things that I didn't include, but you can certainly hit us up on Twitter with that. We're always willing to talk Star Wars, or shoot us a message at jtapodcast@gmail.com, and we will have that conversation. But I think we're going to go ahead and slide into the Holonet news update for the week now, and I think that really the main focus of this week's update is going to be that we know that there is a trailer coming for The Rise of Skywalker. Tom and I have been talking about it back on Monday. The fact that it was expected it was either going to come out on that last Monday on Monday Night Football, or most likely at this point it's going to be the 21st, next Monday. So we still have not got any definitive answer to when that trailer is going to come out. But if it follows the pattern of the last two, when the trailer does come out, that's going to also open up ticket sales for the film. So just kind of keep an eye on that. I know that once that comes out, that's going to be a whole nother topic for Tom and I to dig into. And if that does come out on next Monday night, we'll probably hold off and record on Tuesday so that we can discuss that.
Yeah, it would make total sense to be able to. Last thing you want to do is have this podcast drop, and then there's some big breaking storyline gets dropped within the trailer coming up here on Monday night, if that's when it does appear, as the rumor is stating so far. And yeah, it looks like the tickets will go on sale there. It'll be interesting to see how early ticket sales go. I expect they'll be just fine, despite what some people want to say about them. So I'm excited for it. And the funny thing is, this is going to be the first year we are going to be in Orlando when this film debuts. So I have to look at a completely different animal trying to book tickets for it while we're at Walt Disney World. So it looks like we're going to have a trip to Disney Springs in the offing coming up this December.
Well, hopefully they do an event like they've done in the past for those film releases tend to get a little bit more notice down there, given it's kind of the home turf for Disney. And I know they've done some events at Disney Springs in the past, so it'd be cool if you get a chance to experience that firsthand.
We're hoping for the best, for sure.
Right. And the next item is that we are now inside a month to the release of Disney Plus, and that's been something that Tom and I have been talking about for quite some time. They did release kind of the initial lineup for all of the entertainment that's going to be released with that when it goes live on November 12th. So definitely go check that out. I think they have like a 3+ hour YouTube video that Disney had put out, kind of highlighting all that entertainment. So I haven't had 3 hours to spare to go through all that yet, but certainly the countdown to The Mandalorian is in its final stretch, and I cannot wait to see what they have come out with. The fact that it's already been renewed for a second season can't be anything but a positive.
Yeah, again, everything we've seen from it, it looks brilliant. It looks like it's going to be everything we would hope for from a live action Star Wars series. And the fact that it's going to be there day one when Disney Plus launches is that much more exciting. And there's so much content out there. You talked about the YouTube video. Disney Plus put out this Twitter thread where they just put together back to back threads of every film or series that are debuting, and I just scrolling through that for it must have been 20 minutes just going through these different things, and that's going to be on there, that's going to be on there. But The Mandalorian is probably the thing that I am most excited to see when it drops here next month.
Here. And I know that that's going to be the first thing that I fire up as soon as I get the app loaded on all of my devices. So, and for anyone who is not signed up for Disney Plus yet, I know that we've talked in the past about the fact that it is a great deal. I mean, it's less than $6 a month. Especially if you go ahead and buy the year package, which I think they were saying was going to be $69.99. But if you want an even better deal than that, I know I had just gotten a message from my brother a couple days ago that he had gone ahead and signed up for the 3-year plan, which they're doing for $170. So that still is an incredible deal. I think that it's kind of a no-brainer, especially if you're a Star Wars fan, not only to have things like The Mandalorian and the Cassian Andor series and the Kenobi series that are all slated to come out, but the fact that you can get access to the Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels and Star Wars Resistance and all this additional content. So even if you've seen it before, I've got to believe that there is plenty of reason to go back and rewatch a lot of that stuff as new content comes out, whether it's books or movies or whatever. There's always times that it kind of triggers something and you want to go back and rewatch, those original animated series that kind of started it all for all this additional Star Wars content that we're getting today.
So much Star Wars content is going to be on there. I was noticing as I was going through that scroll, that thread, that one of the things that are dropped along with all these Star Wars films, of course, is they're also going to be showcasing the debut Empire of Dream, or not the debut, but the documentary Empire of Dreams that is going to be on there. Just a great look behind the scenes of the making of Star Wars. So that is something, if you haven't checked out, you will want to do that, and that will be available to you on Disney Plus as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And really the final item I've got for the HoloNet news this week, and it's really applicable more to folks that are local to where I'm at in Lansing, Michigan. But Grand Rapids Comic-Con is coming up November 8th through the 10th, and we're going to be doing some sponsorship of that particular event, and I'll be on site there that Saturday, November 9th. So if you're a listener that's kind of in our local area planning on going to Grand Rapids Comic-Con, definitely take a look. I will have some probably a podcast shirt on or something to identify me, and be happy to talk to any of you folks that are into this particular podcast or want to talk Star Wars. They do have a couple of guests that I'm going to try to get some time with, including Tom Kane, who did the narration for the Clone Wars and the voice of Grandmaster Yoda, and also Admiral Akbar. So, definitely some iconic Star Wars characters there. And they've also got the actor that played Greedo in the original Star Wars film is going to be at the Grand Rapids Comic-Con. So looking forward to getting to meet some of these people that have just got incredible ties to the Star Wars mythos and having a great time at Comic-Con in general.
Yeah, all these cons they're just always a blast to just get so many fans together and just kind of celebrate all these different genres. Yes, Star Wars, but so many other areas, fandoms as well. And we just, as a matter of fact, Comic-Con San Diego tickets just came available this last weekend, and so we were just working towards trying to secure some of those for ourselves for next year. But anytime one of these cons comes to your area, check it out. Even if you just go for one day, even if you just kind of go around the area, sometimes just the scene outside some of these cons can be a lot of fun as well. So do take advantage of it for sure.
Yep, absolutely. So again, thank you to all our listeners out there. It's really fun every week when the podcast comes out, and the Buzz Sprout that we do our podcast through tracks a lot of information about our listeners in terms of where they're located, and always heartening to see all the different places across the United States, and certainly some of the international locations that pop up. We've got consistent listeners in Czechoslovakia. We've got listeners in Australia. We've got listeners in the U.S., Canada, etc. So any number of countries get highlighted there, and that's always fun to see that we're kind of hooking people who are interested in Star Wars from all over the world, and really across the 50 states. I mean, we've got people from everywhere that listen to the show. So a lot of fun to see that. Glad that you guys have found the podcast and enjoy listening to it. Please don't hesitate to interact with us. As I said, you can reach us on via our email at jtapodcast@gmail.com. You can reach us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Pinterest at JTA Podcast. And certainly, we also have a Patreon page. So if you're interested in doing something to support the podcast, we have multiple tiers for really any price point that you might be interested in. And kind of as those tiers progress, there are some nice things that we're trying to do for our listeners. So if you want to support the podcast that way, please don't hesitate to go out there and check it out. It's patreon.com/JTA Podcast. So again, thank you guys for listening. Thank you for supporting the show. Tom, do you want to go ahead and give information on where they can find you at the Hyperion Adventures podcast and your Star Wars Remembered series that we've been doing together?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, we have a new episode of Star Wars Remembered coming out this weekend. Rob's going to be joining us as we look back at the close of the original trilogy, Return of the Jedi. So we'll be doing that this weekend. And if you're looking for our show, best place to find us is on our own website, HyperionAdventurespodcast.com. However, we are also on virtually every other place you can get a podcast. We also are very active on social media, and if you want to follow us there, we are on Twitter at Hyperion Podcast, Facebook, Instagram, and Pinterest at Hyperion Adventures Podcast.
Terrific. And again, thank you for joining us, Tom. Please give my thanks and love to Michelle for coming on the show and giving her picks. And thank you to our listeners who did send in clips and lists for this week's episode. It's always very helpful to have that additional content. So I think we're going to go ahead and wrap it at that. Hopefully you guys all have an amazing week. Be positive. keep looking forward to The Mandalorian and some of this new content that's coming out. And hopefully we get to meet some of you at Grand Rapids Comic-Con next month. And with that, we're going to go ahead and sign off. Thank you, and may the Force be with you.